right, Isaiah. We're doing 19 and 20. I don't know if y'all have looked, but chapter 20 in but just a couple of verses in basically one big paragraph. And we'll get to it on, I think, the 7th of January. This is when we'll finish that up, 19 and that part of 20. This coming next week, Wednesday, is our candlelight service here at the church at 7 o'clock. And so we will have that. And then the next Wednesday night is New Year's Eve. And we won't have any services on New Year's Eve because I don't get out and drive when the amateur drunks are ruling the road. So, then we'll start back services again on that first Wednesday night in January. But all the Sundays we are open for business, okay? So that's it. We'll say that. We'll talk about that again on Sunday where everybody can hear it. Okay, Isaiah chapter 19, verse number 6. The rivers will turn foul, the brooks of defense will be emptied and dried up, and the reeds and the rushes will wither. Now, if y'all remember the very end of last week, we were talking about the Nile River and how the tributaries in the brooks off of the Nile River were going to dry up. This is a little bit more elaborate on all that. See, even today, what used to be those brooks and the outlets to the sea, which is the Nile River, they're virtually filled up. They've silted in. And so, you'd think river silt, man, that's some good farming country and stuff. But look, it was once over there almost like a Garden of Eden, I guess you could say, but it's not anymore. There ain't no big growths of vegetation. I mean, it ain't like they got weeds growing on the riverbanks and stuff like that by the Nile River. There's no forest. There's no heavy foliage, not like you would see up along all kinds of rivers, Even like in Texas, some of these old nasty, dirty rivers, they got stuff growing on them, but there ain't much to it on the Nile River. And so God's saying this as he's going on with this stuff that's happening to Egypt, mostly because they've turned their back and they're persecuting his people. They're persecuting Israel, So look, number 7 says this. The papyrus reeds by the river, by the mouth of the river, and everything sown by the river will wither, be driven away, and be no more. So papyrus is what they use for their paper. It was their writing paper. It was really at one time a main Egyptian industry. It was a big business for them. They shipped that stuff as far as their shipping went. They shipped it everywhere they could. Brought a lot of wealth to Egypt, but no longer. It's like nothing there today. Only in small planted lots do you find this. It's around, if there's a real wealthy home, there might be some papyrus. In front of the museum, one of the museums, I think in Cairo, they said that there's some papyrus and a few other places where it's grown. It's more like a landscape of some kind than it is anything else in that country nowadays. And there was no natural cause. There wasn't no disease, there wasn't no worms, there wasn't no bugs. It was because God said, don't grow, And so these people started paying a pretty heavy price for what they had been doing. Verse number 8. The fishermen also mourn, and all those will lament who cast hooks into the river, and they will languish who spread nets on the water. These people lost everything. Another great money crop in a big industry in Egypt at one time back then. But when Israel left Egypt, even the Israelites missed the fish. Remember, they complained to God, and so they had the manna, so God gave them quail. And they weren't really happy with the quail. They wanted the fish that they were getting, and all that fish, huh? No. And so they weren't impressed with the quail, Now the fish, they're mostly all gone. read a deal of a guy that said he had traveled over in Egypt not too long ago and said just very sparsely you'd see somebody out on one of them water bodies, one of them river or even the Nile or a tributary. It's like there's no fishing fleets or anything like that over there with all that water. There just ain't much to it because there's not a lot of fish over there anymore. And like I said, I'm sure in those days, and probably even still today, I'm sure there's some mourning and some lament from all of this stuff. I imagine these people are about as still sick about that today as the Israelites were when they left Egypt and didn't get any fish anymore. But, when God's serious, he ain't playing about this stuff. Verse number 9. Moreover, those who work in fine flax and those who weave fine fabric will be ashamed. See, even the flax. Flax was a great big money crop over there then too. Made a lot of money, and it was a good industry, and it made real fine linen. Flax was just wonderful stuff. But it's all gone by the wayside. I mean, they made everything from this stuff. Fine clothes. It was said that flax made cloth very similar to silk. Said it was just a wonderful cloth. And fishing nets, it made fishing nets that were like super long, good and strong and long lasting. And they made a lot of tent canvas and stuff like that. Matter of fact, the Wilderness Tabernacle tent was made from this flax at that time. But today, all that's gone. It's not even an industry over there anymore, So God was drying up a lot of stuff for these people because time and time and again, they would not listen to the Lord, okay? Verse number 10. And its foundations will be broken, and all who make wages will be troubled of soul. Along with most of the wealth and most of the industries, everything went away. The flax, the fishing, the papyrus, that was three of the huge main industries, in Egypt. And, and not only that's gone, but then then the money, the money for the state is gone down. So all who make wages will be troubled of soul. So they're having to find some other way to eke out a meager living, how to feed their families. And, there's nothing growing over there. So what are they feeding their families on? I mean, these people they got put in a pretty good bind and still are, the way I understand it today. That things are still pretty rough over there. It ain't no easy living. It ain't no easy living over there. And the wealth is gone, and they're down to pretty much what I guess you would call a poverty status in the biggest parts of that country, when they can't find something else to make a little living about. So, verses 11 and 12. Surely the princes of Zod are fools. If Pharaoh's wise counselors give foolish counsel, how do you say to Pharaoh, I am the son of the wise, the son of ancient kings? Where are they? Where are your wise men? Let them tell you now, and let them know what the Lord of hosts has purposed against Egypt. They're finally, I guess, trying to figure it out that God's causing all this. And what happened to their people is they were intermarrying in the royal line of people. Intermarried like brothers and sisters married each other. And from what I could read, we all hear that is not a healthy thing to do, to intermarry like that. But what it said is it made the people morons. I'm just telling you what I read. In other words, they couldn't run their own business. They were slower of thought. They were unable to function in a ruling capacity because, I guess, of the statistics or however you call it, to this inbreeding. And what verse 12 tells us is God let it happen. He purposed for them to start making mistakes, and that was one of the mistakes that they made because they were already in sin and they just went deeper into sin. And that's the way it usually works. You start out with a little sin, and the next thing you know, if you don't straighten up, you're dabbling in big sin. You know, it's kind of like driving down the highway and looking at a wreck. You look at the wreck long enough, you meet the next wreck, you know. And that's kind of what was happening to these people. Verse number 13. The princes of Zoan have become fools. The princes of Noph are deceived. They have also deluded Egypt, those who are in the mainstay of its tribes. What it's telling us here is that they couldn't run their own business, and so foreigners started coming in. It's just like, if you had to think in time and in history, if there was one really famous person of Egypt, and this person was evidently pretty movie worthy, because Elizabeth Taylor played her part. So who was a famous person you'd think of from Egypt? Cleopatra wasn't Egyptian. She was Greek. No, but that's who. She came over there, and this Greek woman became princess, queen, over all of Egypt, because they couldn't and wouldn't run in their business, you know. So I thought that was pretty, interesting. So that's telling you how bad things had got for these people, and that they couldn't take care of themselves, you know. So it just I'm gonna tell you. Sin's like a snowball running downhill. Some of us here can witness to that, attest to it. Verse number 14. The Lord has mingled and preserved spirits in her midst, and they have caused Egypt to err in all her work, as a drunken man staggers in his vomit. Well, I'm going to tell you, that's a pretty vivid description right there. I worked in them nightclubs long enough. I have a very vivid picture about what this is saying right here, I'm going to tell you. But it's a very good portrayal of the reduction of Egypt to what you would refer to as a base nation. They were just existing. They were barely breathing, you know. This nation that was once big and rich and powerful, it was just barely breathing, you know, during this time. I guess things are a little better today. You know, I'm not really up on Egypt, but, you know, they were just getting by, but they weren't well at all. They were pretty sickly because of all this stuff, okay? They had pretty much lost everything, you know. They lost everything they had. They had no way for people to make a living, you couldn't nowhere to work, you know. They were too poor to even have food lines. So it was just, yeah, lots of sickness going on. And you just had to hustle and scrape for everything that you got, you know, during that time. We're going to finish with verse 15 because to do the rest of it and try to cut it off until January would have been a whole lot, because most of us aren't going to remember what we talked about tonight in January anyway. So anyway, verse 15. Neither will there be any work for Egypt which the head or tail, palm branch or bulrush may do. All industry failure, in commerce, poverty, wretchedness would overtake Egypt. Isaiah predicted failure of false religion, failure of material resources, failure of spiritual power, and Egypt would come into total poverty. And you can look at that, and what I do know about Egypt, it is not a rich nation right now. I mean, when you hear about the world powers and people having the big struggles and stuff, Egypt's not on the mainstream in the news about all of that stuff, you know. You barely hear anything about them. You wouldn't even know they's around sometimes. But this prophecy, they tell me if you would visit Cairo today, you would see all of this prophecy is a true thing, especially compared, to what it used to be. Uh, this prophecy is a funny deal, you know. You would think that they said all of that stuff so long ago, and pretty much today there probably wouldn't be a whole lot of it that wasn't fulfilled. But especially when you're coming towards end times and stuff, there's a lot of it that's still not fulfilled. Uh, I miss a friend of mine I worked with out at the penitentiary. His name was Mr. Green. He was a nut, is what he was. But he was a very committed student to the end times, and he would read a lot of books on the end times, and he would study the Bible. He wouldn't just read what these people were saying, but he would make sure that when he read those books about the end times, that he had his Bible right there. And if they strayed from the Bible, he just threw the book away and got another one, I mean, he was pretty sharp on all that stuff. It's so much fun to talk to. And I wish in stuff like this and this prophecy that he was still around to talk to. He was a good guy. So it's a bad thing about getting older. You lose all your spiritual confidants and all your wisdom havers, from time to time. So, but that's what it's telling us, is that all of this stuff that, that Isaiah's saying, he's not just some idiot out on the street corners beating his chest and screaming out to everybody. I mean, he's a servant of the Lord. He's a deliverer of the message, of the Lord. And that's what those people were. They weren't out there giving their opinion or trying to win public opinion. They were spreading God's word and letting it fall where it may. And a lot of these people, and you'd like to think, boy, they were dummies, but they ain't no different than we are. They ain't no different. I preach on Sunday, and y'all here on Sunday, and Monday we go and do the wrong thing, all of us. Lots of, I mean, it's the truth. It really is, because we're so worldly adapted, And if I'm in the crowded room with all these people, then I think about Jesus first. But I'm going to tell you, sometimes when I'm out there making the decisions on the fly, I struggle with that. I mean, I'll be real with you about it. I wished I wasn't. I wished I could be, to where I wished I could sit up here and tell you that, man, when something comes up, Jesus is always the first thing on my mind. Look, I'm going to tell you all a lot. I have to tell Jesus I'm sorry quite often, because some of the old habits are still kind of hard to break. I'll be straight up there with you, and I let me tend to take over sometimes. But then when I have time to breathe and contemplate a little bit, I have to hang my head, about it. I try to do all that stuff on the inside of my mind. I used to do it on the outside where everybody could see it, but I at least got it to where I contain it enough. I do most of it on the inside now, and that may not be no better, but at least I'm not corrupting nobody else, or I'm trying not to anyway, So I know y'all are all so much more saintly than I am, so I know nobody knows what I'm talking about. That's okay, But anyway, hit your finger with the hammer. Praise Jesus. That's the first thing everybody says, right? Huh? That's the first thing y'all say. I know it is. I trust you. I believe in you. I believe in y'all. But so we'll finish this up. After the first of the year. We're not going to be doing, our study here at the church, but I hope that doesn't defer you from doing something. I pray that every one of you has some kind of, even if it's minute, a study routine, There are so many good daily Bible studies out there that if you will subscribe to them, they'll send you a Bible study on your phone every day, every day. But, you need to be careful who you get. I mean, you need to find somebody sounding in the Word. Uh, David Jeremiah is one of them. You know, he's got a lot of stuff. That's a book writingest dude I ever heard. About every 2 weeks, he comes out with a new book, you know. But any of them I've looked at are good. So I don't know who's doing his writing for him, but they're getting it worked out, you know. You know, and there's other guys out there. I don't have no list of them or anything, but then you have to be careful because we have some others that we thought were wonderful, wonderful guys and that were on the radio and they had huge ministries. They dried up like prunes because of the way they lived their life, and somebody finally, you know, found out about it. There was one guy, do y'all remember hearing Ravi Zacharias on the radio? Any of y'all remember him? Man, that guy was smart. He could talk. He went to campuses all over the United States and debated with the kids and preached to kids about the Lord. And, man, they'd ask him a question, bang, bang, bang. He could answer it all. He ain't on the radio no more. His life wasn't matching his preaching, you know. And y'all have heard of several other people like that. So I'm just telling you to be careful what you subscribe to. And the subscriptions to those things are just like a book if you buy it at the bookstore. You go to Marnell's, it's a Christian bookstore. But I'm going to be honest with you, every book in there is not solely about Christian stuff, okay? So if you buy one, I don't care if you spend $45 on that book because it looks like a really good, and you're reading it, and it's preaching something else besides Jesus Christ, you use the pages of it to kindle your fireplace with. You know what I'm saying? And find you a book that is real, okay? Don't think that you're strong enough to decipher and overrun that stuff because it'll get a hold of you. And don't do it in any of these Bible studies. Find you somebody that's solid. That other guy, I can't believe I can't remember names right now. First Baptist Church of Dallas. His TV program on Sunday is called Pathway to Victory. Robert Jeffries, another excellent guy. You know, the guy at the big church in Atlanta, Charles Stanley. Charles Stanley's a good one. You know, several of them out there. So I encourage you to have you some kind of a private Bible study to keep your mind in the Word of God every day. You know, they always say that if you start out your day with Jesus, your day's always better. You know what that means? Some of y'all aren't going to like this at all. You might have to get your little hottie out of bed a little bit earlier before you leave and go to work. But your day, I promise you, your day be better. It'll be worth the 30 minutes you invested in it. So, all right. Anybody got any questions or anything? We're going to let y'all go online. Appreciate y'all being with us tonight. If we can do anything for you, help you, God bless you. And y'all have a very Merry